This is my second video exploring the theme of sacrifice, both in real life and in literature. This time, the lens shifts to science fiction, science fantasy, high fantasy, and epic storytelling. I've chosen Star Trek as a case study for its timeless appeal and global resonance across generations and cultures. I'll begin by examining how the concept of sacrifice has been hollowed out, its gravity diluted in both narrative and culture. To reclaim its depth, I'll introduce three distinct types of sacrifice that help distinguish true sacrifice from its modern, often symbolic counterpart. From there, I'll trace the historical significance of authentic sacrifice, how it shaped civilizations, and why its preservation in storytelling has played a vital role in humanity's moral, cultural, and scientific evolution. Finally, I'll turn to the present, the erosion of real sacrifice in both lived experience and speculative fiction, with a particular focus on science fiction. I'll explore how artificial intelligence is accelerating this loss, and conclude with two possible paths forward. Let's begin with today's cultural landscape, where sacrifice has been stripped of its gravity, one among many constructive ideals contorted into hollow mutations. It has been rebranded as responsibility sacrifice, whether personal or familial, or as civic sacrifice. Consider, for instance, sacrificing personal time for career advancement, or giving up a professional path to care for a family member. In civic contexts, it might mean laying down one's life in battle for the nation, or rushing into a burning building to save a stranger. Responsibility sacrifice may benefit the individual or the family. Civic sacrifice may glorify the state or rescue a life. But neither reflects the kind of sacrifice that built human civilization across millennia. True sacrifice, the kind that seeded and forged human civilization into today's technological marvel, is devotional in nature. It offers no profit to the individual, no fleeting triumph to the nation. It is not transactional. It is a quiet offering, made without expectation, often without recognition, and yet it forms the invisible scaffolding upon which our civilization is built. The formation of this invisible scaffolding has required the sacrifice of countless individuals, the third kind of sacrifice, over the last million or so years to be perfect enough to be capable of supporting the weight of today's civilization. This type of sacrifice is devotional sacrifice. Before we proceed further, let us briefly examine what devotional sacrifice truly is, and how it enabled the transformation of a species of cannibal primates into builders of civilization. We use the wheel, the needle, the button, the gear, yet we do not know their inventors. These were not the products of momentary genius, but of devotional sacrifice. Cropping, animal domestication, textile production, these required the endurance of entire groups, sustained across generations. But this legacy isn't confined to anonymous history. We also carry names, luminous echoes of sacrifice. Aristarchus of Samos, who placed the sun at the center of the universe, working tirelessly against prevailing dogma. His heliocentric model became the foundation of space science, fundamental to our technological age. Ibn al-Haytham, imprisoned in 11th century Egypt, wrote his magnum opus Kit Balmania, the Book of Optics, during confinement. His work revolutionized our understanding of light, vision, and perception, shaping everything from photography to neuroscience. Alexander Fleming, who discovered penicillin in 1928, endured years of skepticism and painstaking development. His persistence transformed medicine and saved millions. Marie Curie, through poverty, discrimination, and fatal exposure to radiation, laid the foundation for nuclear physics and cancer treatment. Her life was not a career, it was a sacrifice. These are but a few among countless others whose names we may never know. But their devotional labor lives on, woven into the very fabric of our daily existence. Until recently, those who lived lives of devotional sacrifice were known within their communities and remembered in their time, even if history forgot their names. Their presence taught others by example. Children learned by witnessing real-life acts of quiet endurance and principled labor. Today, that transmission has broken. First, because the number of people practicing devotional sacrifice has dwindled, both in absolute terms and as a proportion of society, due to population explosion. Second, because we have erroneously conflated responsibility and civic sacrifice with devotional sacrifice. This confusion has displaced the real thing, replacing it with more palatable, performative substitutes. Third, because the preservation of its essence through story and literature, once a vital conduit of moral architecture for future generations, has eroded. Ancient societies understood the gravity of devotional sacrifice and preserved it through myth, legend, and ritual, so that future generations growing up without role models could still inherit its moral weight. Consider the myth of the Trojan horse. Laocoon sacrifices his life, and his sons, to warn his people, a futile act of devotion swallowed by fate. Or in Eastern lore, Mulan sacrifices her safety and identity to protect her father and serve her nation, not for glory, but out of filial devotion and moral duty. A modern analogue to ancient mythic literature lives in science fiction, science fantasy, high fantasy, and epic storytelling, genres that once carried the moral weight of sacrifice across imagined worlds. One enduring example comes from the various Star Trek series of the 1990s. For instance, in Star Trek Voyager, Captain Janeway makes a devotional sacrifice. She chooses to protect the inhabitants of a vulnerable planet, an act that strands her crew in an unknown region of space. This principled decision forms the moral foundation of the entire series. Until the end of the last century, these genres still echoed the gravity of devotional sacrifice. But with the turn of the century, that portrayal began to fade, replaced by spectacle, transactional and civic sacrifice. The result is a generation growing up without understanding the role devotional sacrifice has played in shaping human civilization over millennia, and unaware of its necessity for our continued evolution. Its disappearance is not merely a moral loss, it is a civilizational unraveling. This is not the first time such a disappearance has occurred within a nation. But for the first time, this regression is not confined to isolated regions, it is unfolding simultaneously across the globe. That convergence is unprecedented and profoundly alarming. Most of us, especially those in positions of influence today, and those who will inherit such roles tomorrow, will never face devotional sacrifice, nor witness it in their lives. The only remaining conduit for understanding it is storytelling, literature, myth, and entertainment. And tragically, even that is vanishing. This is where artificial intelligence steps in and deepens the crisis. AI is trained on what exists. And what exists today is literature devoid of devotional sacrifice. So, when AI is used to write, it reproduces the same hollow narratives, filled with spectacle, superficial valor, and transactional sacrifice. But the problem runs deeper. Even when writers don't use AI, they produce the same slop. Just as many writers now craft stories tailored to entertain specific groups, AI writes for entertainment. And when human writers write for entertainment alone, their work becomes indistinguishable from AI. Content without conviction, form without soul. So, whether the source is human or machine, the output is indistinguishable and equally empty. Yet instead of deepening their craft or confronting the decay, many writers have chosen to scapegoat AI, blaming the machine for a decline they themselves perpetuate. This is what must be understood: the end must matter. Yes, the end does not justify the means, but the end must still carry weight. We must stop writing for the sake of writing. It is not for entertainment alone. It is for transmission of meaning, of memory, of moral architecture. So, when we stand against slop, we must stand against all slop, both AI slop and human slop. But instead, we've built industries around it: political slop, cultural slop, ideological slop. Because human slop sells. And constructive social evolution does not, because it requires what spectacle cannot offer: introspection, endurance, and the quiet, generational weight of devotional sacrifice. Now, I don't just talk, I do the work. In my previous video, I spoke about my novel Ebel and the theme of sacrifice. I've carried that same principle into my science fiction and science fantasy, like Nureeva and Tangora, where devotional sacrifice is not just present, but central. I know what it takes to make a story engaging. And that's where the real effort went into Nureeva and Tangora. Because without engagement, there is no audience. And without an audience, there is no transmission, no lesson, no legacy. This is where hard work matters. And this is where today's writers can still compete with AI. In reality, AI has a long way to go before it can write truly engaging stories rooted in devotional sacrifice. Right now, all it can do is polish what's already well written, correct grammar, smooth phrasing. You're welcome to read Nureeva and Tangora and decide for yourself, can AI even come close to writing such a novel? I'll save you the time, but it can't. I tried. I gave AI my novel Shortcut Wedding and asked it to rewrite it. The result was excruciating, days of frustrating edits, and still unreadable slop. I'm releasing it chapter by chapter as an audiobook under the title Starlit Wedding on social media. Compare it yourself. Despite all the effort to make it barely tolerable, readers familiar with my work have called it the worst book I've ever written. So, no, AI cannot write quality. Not yet. And we have human-written slop to thank for what it's been trained on. While we're here, let's clarify something. My videos keep getting dismissed as AI slop, simply because I use AI voiceover. So, if you're commenting below that this video is AI slop, I invite you to explain. Does using AI narration make a video equivalent to one where the writing, animation, and voice are all generated by single prompts? If not, then let's be precise. Let's define what AI slop actually is. Because conflating tools with intent, or automation with emptiness, is just another form of lazy critique. Instead of wasting time fault-finding and dismissing everything under the sun, we need to focus on our own shortcomings. As writers, we must improve. We must write better. And we must build a system where quality rises, not divisiveness, not shock value. And if one day someone produces a Shakespeare-level work using an AI prompt, that moment should not be ridiculed, it should be celebrated. Because at that point, AI will have crossed a threshold, the entertainment-driven writing industry will no longer require human labor. And that's not a loss, it's a liberation. As humans, we'll have far more urgent tasks to focus on. Family, social cohesion, cures for disease, affordable housing, world hunger, low-cost recyclable solar panels, to name just a few. In that utopian future, those who still choose to write can do so as a personal calling, perhaps to restore sacrifice to its rightful place in storytelling. Because everyone needs a hobby. But not everyone needs to write as one. But there is another future. A darker one, where the memory of devotional sacrifice fades, and selfishness overtakes every sphere of life. In that world, even AI won't be trained to write Shakespeare for meaning, it will be trained to write for profit. Just like everything else, optimized for the elitist gain. Stripped of soul. And that dystopian future won't be confined to one region or one nation. It will be a global collapse, a civilisational slide into the abyss of spectacle and selfishness. If we want to avoid that future, we need people who embody devotional sacrifice. And that requires one of two things, living role models, or literature that preserves their essence. Until AI can do that, we need writers to do it. Not as a hobby or career, but as their own devotional offering to human civilization.